A Thing in the Woods. Chapter 14. After Lucy left, everything fell quiet. My father sat down at the kitchen table with his laptop in front of him, doing whatever work he had to do that day, and I sat in front of the TV, pretending to enjoy old cartoons while secretly wondering what the hell I was going to do now. The silence between the two of us was thick. We both knew what we weren't talking about, but neither one of us knew how to talk about it, so we just didn't. My mother came home from the bus station, and she walked right to the kitchen table to sit with my father. He closed his laptop and made time for her, but even they didn't say anything to each other. What could they have been thinking in that moment? Did they believe that Lucy was crazy like me? Did they think that there was something in the water making us experience these things? I was aware of their eyes on me at times. I could feel them watching and waiting for me to have another one of my breakdowns. I'm sure that they wanted to come to me and comfort me, but they didn't know how to begin doing that, so they kept their distance, and I kept mine. With my eyes on the TV, my mind was racing. I was trying to figure out my plan for that night, but I couldn't think of one. Set up a video camera like they do on TV? That'd be great, except for the fact that I didn't have a video camera, and my parents certainly wouldn't have allowed me to set one up in my bedroom. An audio recorder would have made more sense. My experiences had all been noises, and if I could capture those noises, someone would have to believe me. I had an old tape recorder buried somewhere in my closet, so I thought that this would be my best bet. However, the flaw in this plan was that it didn't get me away from the intruders. I would once again be stuck in my room just waiting for them to come, watching and whispering all night long. After a couple of hours just watching the TV, I asked my parents if I could go find my friends and hang out with them for a while. Maybe tomorrow, my mother said. It'd be nice to have a quiet day as a family. She made it sound as though we hadn't been having quiet days as a family ever since I found the body. She knew as well as I did that there would be another excuse the next day and the next, until they decided to let me rejoin the world. If nobody knew the cause of death, then why did people just assume that the kids were murdered? Why should I have been locked away in my house for the rest of my life just because there might possibly be a murderer on the loose in theory? I felt anger swelling inside of me as I sat there. I didn't deserve to be punished for something that I had no control over. On the TV, one of the cartoon characters laughed a sickly sweet cartoon laugh. At the same time, I heard a laugh outside, high-pitched and far away. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to will that laugh outside to go away. It was daylight, and the laugh had no business being there during the day. The laugh repeated. This time I got to my feet and walked to the window, looking out into the distance as far as I could see. At first, I saw nothing except trees gently swaying in the bright summer sun. Then there was something else. I only managed to catch the briefest glimpse of color, but I definitely saw something. It was a splash of blue amongst the browns and greens that made up the rest of my view. As soon as I saw it, it was gone, but I knew that it was real. I knew that I had seen something. I turned to my parents and asked them if I could go outside, just right outside. Not far, I promised. My parents shared a look between them, and then my mother told me that I could go outside, but I had to stay within sight of our house. I didn't say anything in response to that. I just ran out the door, slamming it shut behind me. I ran to the side of the house and looked out into the grass and trees nearby, trying to find that splash of blue, but I saw nothing. Turning my ear toward the trees, I listened for the sound of the laugh, but I heard nothing. I knew that they were out there. Whatever they were watching me and waiting until my guard was down. They wanted me to know that they were always there, even during the day. They wanted me to know that they could get at me whenever they wanted, and there was nothing that I could do to stop them. A gust of wind was moving toward me from within the trees. I could hear the leaves blowing overhead in the distance, moving closer and closer, branches clacking against each other as the trees swayed. In my lifetime, those woods had been the Wild West, a desert island, Neverland, and 100 other places. They'd even been haunted a few times before in my imagination. I'd never found them to be creepy in the least. I would wander through them without a second thought when I was younger. But something had changed. Now, when I pictured myself trekking deep into those woods, I imagined hands sticking out through the dirt. Not Dead hands, but hands that were reaching for me, trying to drag me down into the dirt with them. I stopped walking but continued to look into the woods. I called out, "Hello," in a voice that was loud enough to be heard by anything nearby, but not by my parents inside the house, assuming that they weren't at the window watching me. There was no response. No colors moving about in the woods, nor laughter in the distance. There were no whispers. I glanced back at my house. My parents weren't watching me at the window. They weren't filming my every movement or taking notes. I was alone, which had no good reason to be a comfort in that moment, but it did feel like one. After giving up on my search of the woods, I turned away from them and started to walk toward my driveway. I knew that if I took off running at that moment, I could find my friends and tell them what was happening before my parents had a chance to catch up to me. They'd yell and I'd probably be grounded, but what else was new? As I considered the possibility, I started to think about where my friends would be at that moment on a pleasant, bright summer day. I tried to convince myself that they'd be at one of their houses, playing video games or attempting to build a race car out of cardboard boxes, but I knew that I was kidding myself. If I wanted to find my friends, I would have to head toward the woods. The police had closed the field off, which would only make it more appealing to my friends. They'd find trees to climb nearby and watch the investigation through binoculars. Still walking toward my driveway, I thought about this. From the trees, we could see what the police were doing and whatever they found. We'd be able to see whatever evidence they uncovered in the field. And if we went across the bridge, we could find a spot in the woods to watch as the police searched the mud beside the river. I don't know what I expected the police to find out there, but I did know that I wanted to see it. I wanted to go back to the spot where I had found the body and dig. I wanted to search for the evidence myself. Maybe I could find out who had killed the kids. Maybe I could prove to my parents that I wasn't insane. Maybe I could do neither of those things, but I just wanted to see the place again. "Dale," I heard my father's voice from the front door calling to me. "No wandering off." I stopped walking and turned around, yelling back, "I'm not." Except I didn't know whether or not that was true. I hadn't planned to run off, but I did want to. And maybe I would have. I couldn't help but wonder what was out there, and the urge to find out was powerful. As I considered that thought, Lucy's words came back to me. "They want you to go to the field," she had said. "Don't go."
This is the voice of the Embers, where stories burn.